to the wonderful deities of ISKCON Shri Shadripuram, Shri Jagannath Mandir, ISKCON Shri Shadripuram. लॉर्ड बलदेवा की जय, सुभद्रा महारानी की जय, लॉर्ड जगन्नाथा की जय, पंचतत्वा की जय, गौर निताई की जय, लॉर्ड परशुरामा की जय, लॉर्ड वामन देव की जय, गुरु परंपरा की जय, शिला प्रभुपाद की जय, शिला गुरु महाराज की जय. We'll say our prayers. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Okay, so today we have 3 shlokas. 12.3, 4 and 5. ये त्वाक्षरम् अनिर्देश्यम् अव्यक्तं पर्युपासते सर्वत्रागम् अचिन्त्यं च कुटास्थम् अचलं ध्रुवम् सनियम्येन्द्रियाग्रामं सर्वत्र समबुद्धया ते प्राप्नुवन्ति माम् एव सर्वभूतहिते रतः. Translation. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed, and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve it. 12.5 क्लेशोऽधिकातरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्ता चेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गते दुःखम् देहावद्भिरवाप्यते. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Okay, so this is based on the inquiry of Arjuna. The chapter is the path of devotion, Bhakti Yoga. So here it's about Bhakti Yoga is pure devotional service to Lord Krishna. It says is the highest and most expedient means for attaining pure love for Krishna, which is the highest end of spiritual existence. Those who follow the supreme path, develop divine qualities. And then Arjuna had asked this question, and based on that, Lord answers, like, which is better? Arjuna inquired, previous sloka, 12.1. Which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? So, I mean, this is in progression. So Arjuna has been, Lord Krishna had shared all the information, what are the various yogas and everything related to that, so that Arjuna comes to the proper understanding, and about karma and bhakti, and some detail about Triguna, and in Bhagavad-gītā also, as it was mentioned by Lord, there are 3 types of realization. One is Brahmajyoti realization, which is impersonal realization, which is impersonal feature of the Lord. Then the other feature of the Lord is Paramatma realization, which is localized Paramatma, which is another feature, localized feature of the Lord. in every jiva's heart, individual living entity's heart, whether animals or whatever species, humans. And then the highest level of realization is Bhagavan realization, which is the complete realization, full realization. Because in this realization, the Jivatma, on perfection, he realizes all three. What are those all three? Satchit Ananda. And so, I mean, Lord is Satchit Ananda. So he understands, which is Sat is eternity, eternal existence, and Chit is Lord's knowledge potency. Um, and the third is Ananda, Heladani. That all three realization. So Srila Prabhupada explains that um, as Lord is explaining that this realization, what this offers, and how difficult it is, and what is the right choice Arjuna should make. So Lord is explaining um, this here. So His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu explains this. Um, Krishna has used the same words as he is used in previous 3 and 4 verses. What Arjuna has used in this question, Aksharam, Avyaktam, to describe. So in this verse, he has talked about non-manifested aspect, impersonal aspect, and then mentioned how that has to be worshipped in verse 4. Saniyamyendriya gramam. So one has to have strict rule and regulations. One has to follow these strict rules and regulations. So there are other complexities also. Indriya gramam, to control all the senses. Sarvatra samabuddhaya, and tries to have equal vision towards everything. And so one has to achieve the state of equanimity where one does not discriminate between not just one species and human species, but among humans also, the person doesn't discriminate, but he's at all given times he sees everything as one part and parcel of Krishna. Everything is spiritual, irrespective of the material body, because that is temporary. So that person has to be in that state of equanimity. He has to be equipoised towards everything. Not only that, he has to be equipoised toward both happiness and sadness, dukh, sukh, all those things. Um, so he should not experience misery in that state. So te prapnuvanti mam eva, they will also obtain me eva certainly when sarva bhuta hite rataha. So in this verse, Lord Krishna does not speak anything negative about these people. They will also obtain me. So Krishna is saying if they achieve perfection in that, they will also attain me. But these are the things they have to go through. State of equanimity, control of senses, follow strict rules and regulations. So then they can how I mean how they will be worshipping the impersonal feature of the Lord. So, but Lord Krishna also explains further that it is difficult, especially in this yuga. Um, So in the next verse, he is saying it is not so easy. So Arjuna's question was, who is most united? Krishna said, those who fix his mind on me are most united. Others, they will also come to me. There is people who follow impersonal realization or any other realization like. But there is some complex process that needs to be followed. And one has to be controlling senses, achieve state of equanimity, equal vision towards everything and everyone all the time. So this is how it gets complex. So Shilopad also gives more detail to this further. So what is that they have to go through in the 12.5? Um, Shilopad is explaining. So this group of transcendentalists who follow this path of the inconceivable, unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord are called Jnana Yogis. And persons who are in full Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service to the Lord are called Bhakti Yogis. Now, Prabhupada gives difference. The difference between Jnana Yogi and Bhakti Yoga is there. Process of Jnana Yoga in comparison process of Bhakti Yoga. So the process of Jnana Yoga although ultimately bringing one to the same goal, that is Krishna, and Krishna guarantees that okay, once they achieve and they follow these processes, rules, regulations, control their senses, and all that, achieve state of equanimity towards everyone and everything all the time, they will also come to me, but it is very troublesome. So they will achieve their goal, that is Krishna, by this process also, but it is very troublesome, it is very complex. So, whereas the path of Bhakti Yogi, the process of being in direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is easier and natural for the embodied soul. How so? The individual soul is embodied since time immemorial. So, by this time, going through Bhagavad-gītā, we understand that we go through this repeated birth and death. Once we come into this material world. Okay, somebody has a question. I see somebody has raised hand. Okay. So we come into this material world, we go through many births and death. We go through that repeatedly till we achieve perfection. And it is possible only in when we get a human body. It is possible, right? But it depends even after coming to human life, if people don't take to Krishna consciousness or um, then they will still go through repeated birth and death, sometimes higher species, lower species, depending on the mode they are in, depending on the desire they have at the time of leaving the body. All those things will be are taken into account. So that is there, and in material world we have three gunas: satogun, rajogun, tamogun, mode of goodness, passion, ignorance, and beyond this mode of goodness is unmixed shuddha sattva guna, Shuddha Sattva, that is unalloyed, unmixed, pure goodness. So that is there. So this is how it is. So once we come into this material, we will take this body, material body, that leads to further complication. And especially when Prabhupada says, anybody trying to practice impersonalism or impersonal feature of the Lord, it gets very difficult. Because the individual soul is embodied since time immemorial, it is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he is not the body. So, somebody through jnana or theory only coming to realize that Lord has a beautiful form, spiritual body, this is how it is. And here in this world, we are in this material world, we are so used to experiencing everything through our senses, and whatever our senses experience, through that what we experience, we say it is truth and like that. But not seeing the form of the Lord and just hearing about that form of the Lord through feature, or understanding Lord as an impersonal feature, it gets difficult, especially when somebody wants to realize this impersonal feature, because person has a body and trying to realize the impersonal feature. So that gap is there, having experienced something with this body and trying to experience something which is different from this body, which is impersonal, that leads to this complexity. So how to come to that stage. So it is very difficult for him to simply understand something theoretically, that is not a body. So therefore the bhakti yogi accepts the deity of Krishna as worshipable, because there is some bodily conception. So we have a body, every other people we see, they have a body, they have a form, and then when we see this beautiful form of the Lord, which is deity of the Lord, and we start worshipping, so one can, in some bodily conception, one can fix his mind on that. And so it is possible for that person to actually apply his mind on this deity of the Lord, Archa Vigraha, and through Bhakti Yoga. So this, of course, Srila Prabhupada explains that the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form within the temple is not idle worship. It is not dead matter. There is evidence in the Vedic literature that worship may be saguna or nirguna, of the Supreme possessing or not possessing attributes, qualities. Worship of the deity in the temple is saguna worship, for the Lord is represented by material qualities here. But the form of the Lord, though represented by material qualities such as stone, wood, oil, paint, etc., is not actually material. That is the absolute nature of the Supreme Lord. So these whatever wood, stone, everything, whatever is used for worshipping or for, creating a beautiful deity of the Lord Archivigra and then worshipping it. So that material, whatever is used, is also potency from the potency of the Lord, right? So even the source of this material potency is also spiritual potency because Lord is absolute. He is spiritual. So understanding that, plus people in temple they also do pran pratishtha. They they invite the living and Lord into this deity, and we then say after the pran pratishtha is complete, then we say Lord is living in that deity, and we can reciprocate with that. So this is how it is. It's not by whims. There is a process to do this also, um, and then deity has to be worshipped regularly. Um, offering a prasadam, dressing, everything, prayers and everything. The daily routine, temple routine has to be done. Then the deity is pleased and reciprocates with devotees. So Prabhupada gives a crude example of this. He says there is a crude example of this. We will find some mailboxes on the street, and if we post our letters in those boxes, they will naturally go to their destination without difficulty. But if somebody creates an imitation box, an old box, which we may find somewhere, but which is not authorized by the post office, it will not work. Nobody will come to collect it and your post will be there. So like that, Archavigraha. Similarly, God has an authorized representation in the deity form, which is called Archavigraha. So God has himself authorized. It's mentioned in the scriptures, like here mentioned Saguna and Nirguna. So it is authorized. Lord is saying, I'll accept this. You do this, I'll accept this. This is mentioned in the scripture. And Lord also says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toim. All you have to do is just offer me this. He will accept it if you do it with love and devotion. So, like that, this is authorized representation in the deity form, and which is called Archavigraha. So, this Archavigraha is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So, Lord willingly, mercifully is willing to take this Archavigraha form, and this is manifestation of the Lord, and accept our service or offering into that form. So Lord Himself is saying, I'll accept it if you do this. It's mentioned in the scriptures. So God will accept service through that form. Because Lord is all omnipotent, all powerful, and therefore by his incarnation as Archavigraha, he can accept the services of the devotee just to make it convenient for the man after coming in this conditioned life. We can only perceive what our material senses allow us to perceive, and there are things beyond these senses which are existing, but we cannot perceive it because we are not qualified now. So that is how it is. So, so for a devotee, there is no difficulty in approaching the Supreme immediately and directly through this Archavigraha, through this Bhakti Yoga process. But for those who are following the impersonal way to spiritual realization, the path is very difficult. First, they have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through Vedic scriptures, as the Upanishads. Then they have to learn the language, understand the non perceptual feelings, that which we cannot perceive with our senses, material senses, realize all these processes, realize as it is. So these are the hindrances here, these are the difficulties. This is not very easy for a common man. Plus, in Kali Yuga, we have so many miseries and so many things which take our attention, take our time, and we have very limited time, you know. So achieving perfection through this path is very difficult. A person in Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service, Srila Prabhupada explains that simply by the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, by offering regulative obeisances unto the deity, by hearing the glories of the Lord, by eating the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. So once engaged in this process, one will not get frustrated because he is already used to this bodily concept form, so and then worshipping this deity form of the Lord, person will not get frustrated. He will realize this with reciprocation. If he is following, Lord says that if you take one step, I'll take my one step. So it's like you do this, Lord will reciprocate. So this is how it is. So there is no doubt that impersonalists are unnecessarily taking a troublesome path with the risk of not realizing the absolute truth at the ultimate end. But the personalist, without any risk, trouble, or difficulty, approaches the Supreme Personality directly. And this is method given by Lord Himself in His saying, you take to this process. So when asked, Arjuna asked, which is better, this Brahman impersonal realization or this personal realization, form of the Lord, Bhakti Yoga, which is better? So therefore, it is advised here that one should not take up this troublesome path of self-realization because there is uncertainty in the ultimate result. So otherwise, person will be spending time going through this troublesome process, trying to understand what is Brahman, what is not Brahman, and spend his own life in that way, and the result is simply troublesome. So Prabhupada explains that by the grace of some devotee, such a transcendentalist, highly learned in the process of Jnana Yoga, somebody who's practicing impersonalism, Jnana Yoga, trying to realize Brahman feature of the Lord, if he comes across a devotee by some mercy or grace of some devotee, if he comes to that, still that person, when he comes to the point of bhakti yoga or devotion service, because he has practiced this impersonalism, this impersonal feature of the Lord, now he's coming to this from Jnana Yoga, he's coming to this Bhakti Yoga process. Still, he will at later stage also, still he will find it troublesome because he will not be able to give up this idea of impersonalism. Because therefore, embodied soul is always in difficulty with the unmanifest. And so when he tries to practice Bhakti Yoga, personal feature of the Lord, at the time of practice also, at the time of realization also, he will have those challenges because he has this concept in his mind of this unmanifest feature of the Lord. So we understand that every living entity is eternally individual soul. If he wants to merge into the spiritual whole, he can accomplish the realization of the eternal and knowledgeable aspect of his original nature, but the blissful portion is not realized. So this Sachit Ananda feature of the Lord. So if person takes to this impersonalism, Brahman realization, if he achieves this perfection also in that, so that Sat feature he will realize the eternity, eternal existence of the Lord. But because he is not into that relationship with the personal feature of the Lord, so he will not achieve this complete knowledge and not achieve this complete Ananda or bliss feature of the Lord. He will have some knowledge, he will achieve some knowledge, but he will achieve this Sat feature or eternity, external existence of the Lord, but he will not realize the other two in complete. So this there is some Ananda also related to this Brahman realization, but that is like a drop of bliss in the ocean of nectar which one realizes in personal realization or Bhagwan realization or when somebody takes to Bhakti Yoga. So this whatever bliss this person will get, it will just be like a drop in the ocean of the bliss of nectar of realization, the personal realization of the Lord, Bhagwan realization. So in practicing Bhakti Yoga. So this is all this is there. So to this question, for every individual living entity, the process of Krishna consciousness, which entails full engagement in devotional service, is the best way. So, if one wants to ignore the devotional service, there is this danger of turning to atheism. That risk is also there. After getting frustrated, person can completely leave everything and get into atheism. So, conclusion is the process of centering attention on the unmanifested, the inconceivable feature of the Lord, which is beyond the approach of these senses. Currently, our senses are material. Um, should never be encouraged at any time, especially in this age. This age is Kali Yuga. It is not advised by Lord Krishna because now to control our senses is very, very difficult. In previous yugas, still it was possible, but now it's very difficult. Our senses are engaged 24/7 in material. I mean, whether it is TV, whether it is magazines, whether it is YouTube, it's very difficult to control the senses. Um, People earlier, there were no McDonald's and fast food joints. People would now can just go to the fast food joint and eat, and that's not prasadam. So all these challenges are there. Earlier, there were no such facilities. People had to cook, at least, whatever they cook, they eat, and some were conscious, so they would be offering it a lot. So those things are there. So many difficulties are there, and this Kali Yuga, it's limited time, so that is there. So Prabhupada gives further examples to explain this thing. For example, um, Prabhupada says this. It is simply troublesome. Klesha. Klesha means troublesome because they cannot concentrate. Avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavadbhir avapyate. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So those who have accepted this body, for them, thinking of the impersonal feature is simply artificial. Um, so Prabhupada explains that Bahunam Janmanam, after many, many births, if they are fortunate enough to meet some real devotee, then he becomes enlightened. So association has its impact on people. Vasudeva Sarvamiti. He then accepts Vasudeva, Krishna, as everything. He will come to that conclusion. Saha Mahatma Sudurlava. Such kind of great soul is very rare. So, so Prabhupada is saying that here is an opportunity to come to get directly that post of great soul by chanting Hare Krishna. So it is very scientific. We present this formula to any person who wants to understand this movement scientifically, philosophically, logically. There is no dearth of all these things in this movement. We are not sentimental at all. Um, so Prabhupada says that yes, there should be sentiment. Without sentiment, nobody can come to the stage of ecstasy. The bliss and the highest stage of that stage where you feel these ecstatic symptoms coming to that conclusion. But that sentiment is transcendental sentiment. This is not ordinary sentiment. So sentiment, when religion or any faith is devoid of philosophy and logic, then it is material sentiment. And philosophy and logic without understanding of God is simply waste of time, mental speculation, right? So both should be combined, religion plus philosophy. So this philosophy, when we say we have these literatures now, we have this Bhagavad-gītā, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and so many small books and so many literatures of our Goswamis, 6 Goswamis, Acharyas on the Parampara. They are getting translated from Bengali to Hindi, English, and so many other languages. So these things are happening. So people can take advantage of these things. So Prabhupada also gives another example. Um, so when he was preaching in US and everywhere, he was preaching to youngsters also, college going students. So he says that he gives an example of these college students. We are claiming college students, university students, because we are presenting religion on the basis of philosophy and logic. We are not blindly following it. So there is some science behind this thing, this devotional service. We are not dogmatism. We are no dogmatism. We have got reason, philosophy, and everything, science, scientific. If you want to understand this Krishna consciousness on the basis of philosophy, logic, and science, we are prepared to present to you. It's all there. So we have these scriptures. But the ultimate goal is to surrender unto the Supreme. So although you will find some of the students, these people who are coming, joining us, they are not very great philosophers or great scientists or greatest educationists, but they have accepted the reality, Krishna, that they have surrendered. Therefore, they are the highest yogi. So Prabhupada gives example. So somebody, if he is offering $1 million, when if somebody is offering $1 million, one may understand or one may not understand it. What is the value of this $1 million? But if one has got that $1 million, then he is rich man, undoubtedly. Similarly, these boys and the disciples and these followers of this movement, these college going students and anybody who comes who are accepting Krishna as the Supreme Lord, that they are doing, they are surrendering. They have already got that millions of dollars. They are the richest. They are the highest yogis. They may not understand it at that moment that what is the value of Krishna, but because they have surrendered, they are that greatest yogis. They will come to that stage automatically. Another example Prabhupada gives is just like fire. If you touch knowingly or unknowingly, it is fire and it will burn. So similarly, if Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one who has taken him, then he will derive the highest benefit, undoubtedly. That is guaranteed. If somebody is surrendering, somebody is serving, he will definitely derive the highest benefit. It may be now, tomorrow, later, but it will certainly happen because that person have accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Bhagwan. He is surrendered, he is following the process. So all those things are there, and so Prabhupada further explains, um, you know, all these things are there. What all it takes to come to that conclusion. So in human society, there have been many instances in which great exalted politicians have fallen from government and become lost in historical oblivion. So Prabhupada is saying that to become president or prime minister is not easy. One must work very hard to achieve the post. And even though one may reach this goal at any moment, one may be kicked down from by material nature. This is the nature of material nature, right? We don't know. So, but it is there. That effect is there. So, why spend so much energy on this achieving this impermanent thing? Why not dedicate to something which is permanent, which is spiritual, which is Krishna consciousness? So, persons who do not ultimately accept the Supreme Personality of God and take to devotional service, but who instead are attached to impersonalism, voidism, must undergo great labor to achieve their goal. And to achieve understanding, such persons work very hard and undergo severe austerities, but their hard labor and austerities themselves are their only achievement. For they do not actually achieve the real goal of life, which is Krishna. So, Dhruva Maharaj, uh, example of Dhruva Maharaj, at first he wanted to achieve the greatest material kingdom and greater material possessions than his father, who is a king. But when he was actually favored by the Lord, when the Lord was pleased with him, who appeared before him to give him the benediction he desired, Dhruva Maharaj refused it, saying, Swamin kritartho asmi varam na yache. Now I am fully satisfied. I do not want any material possession. And I do not want any material benediction. This is the perfection of life. So whether one knows completely Krishna or not, but because he has surrendered, he accepted that Krishna is Bhagwan, and he stays in that process, he will come to that conclusion. He will achieve that mercy of the Lord. That is guaranteed. That is there. So that perfection of life will be achieved. If one achieves the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, one is fully satisfied and does not need to ask for any material benediction. So that is the effect of this bhakti yoga, and this is permanent. So, the various stages Prabhupada explains in that as one who is um, simply by this process, one is guaranteed to return home back to Godhead and thus attain the highest perfection. So, one who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. This stage, this person who takes to bhakti yoga, he will achieve this stage of perfection. When he achieves that, he will also come to the same stage, equally disposed to every living entity, and he doesn't desire anything or laments for anything. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. One can understand the Supreme Personality as he is only by devotional service. And when one is full consciousness of the Supreme Lord, by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of Lord. So even when person takes to bhakti yoga, as compared to impersonalism, where one has to control his senses and achieve the state of equanimity, equipoise, see everything as equal. When person takes to this bhakti yoga, success is guaranteed now or later. When he achieves this perfection, automatically he will come to the stage where he will see things equally. He will be equally disposed towards every living entity. He will not lament for anything. He will not desire anything material. So he will be in that state of joyfulness. He will realize the Supreme Brahman. All that is there. Now this will we share in chapter 18, 54th and 55th verse. So that is how it is. So as to Arjuna's question, one should take to bhakti yoga. Lord's response to Arjuna, one should take to Krishna consciousness bhakti yoga rather than impersonal feature of the Lord. Otherwise, this impersonal feature is very troublesome. Whereas Bhakti Yoga, one is in bliss, because there is some bodily conception which one is used to after taking this body. Otherwise, it is very difficult for embodied souls to realize impersonalism, practice impersonalism. And there is a risk of one falling or leaving and taking to atheism. So all that is there. So further it will be explained. So thank you, Prabhuji Mataji. Thanks for joining. We'll meet again tomorrow. And if anybody has any question, please ask before we log off. Hare Krishna.